Okay, Alan, the last part. Now, you've spent most of your adult life backing horses for a living. Have you any regrets about spending it in such a way?
Well, I don't know whether you're aware, but I mean, I I produced a book, a small book, a memoir, and I gave it the title "A Wasted Life." But no, I don't really think it was a wasted life. That was a warning that my grandfather gave me. He'd become aware that I was keen on the horses. This would have been in the mid '60s when I was still a teenager. I met him one day in his local pub for a lunchtime drink. And he said, "You still backing the horses?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "You don't want to do that." He said, "I've seen people." He was a building foreman, so he had workmen under him. He said, "I've seen people," he said, "they just go from bad to worse." He said, you concentrate on backing the GGs, you'll have a wasted life," he said. I use that as the title of that book. Unfortunately, of course, he's no longer with us, so I can't go back to that. So just say, yeah.
Now, people that follow horse racing and back the outcomes of races do so in the hope and belief that they can win. Are the cards stacked more against you these days than they were back in your day? And you said the 90s for starters. You had
I think, yeah,
halcyon days.
it's obviously harder now than it was then because there's so much more information which is so freely available to anybody who wants to take advantage of it. I mean, video replays, that would have been a great thing, wouldn't it, in the 90s? Well, I had that. I actually paid $900 a year in 1992, 93, to have the SIS nightly review transmitted into my office, which was my back bedroom. And I had two MFI wall units stacked with VHS tapes. I used to record all this stuff. Anorak that I have, it was all carefully labelled as to what meeting it was and what the date was. But what it meant was I could go back and watch a race again. How many people could do that in 1992? Very few, I think. Yeah, I mean, because that's now freely available to everybody, so much other information is freely available. I mean, go back to the 1970s. You could back winners just because you knew a horse that liked soft ground on a day when it rained. I mean, you get no chance of doing that now.
Is there anything that worked for you in 2017 that doesn't work for you anymore?
I can't think of anything offhand, Simon. No, I don't think I don't think anything's changed that much, that dramatically.
Okay. So now that you've already ascertained that you're financially secure, now you don't need to win to live, basically. Does that take the pressure off and make things easier for you?
Well, clearly it does. But to be perfectly honest, I never felt any pressure. Even in the 90s, I never felt under pressure until I became a tipster. And then when you were tipping and you were getting other people to put money on the same horses, that was pressure. But for myself, no. I mean, keep in mind I was single, no wife, no kids, not through choice, that was just the way life turned out. And I'd paid off my mortgage with the jackpot win in March 1993. So I didn't have that pressure of paying to keep a roof over my head. The house was mine. I had a car I'd bought for cash out of the redundancy money. So there were no real pressures. What I needed to live on for the outgoings was quite a small amount compared to most people. So no, I never felt the pressure then, really.
So did you? I mean, I'm getting the impression that you got to a level you were happy. You never felt the urge to keep trying to scale up, so that, like a lot of people have experienced, they up their stakes and then the worst losing run known to man quickly follows and they knock themselves out. It gets to be quite hairy.
Yeah,
you never got to that sort of stage?
I never got, because I think because I was never having that number of bets. So it was never a situation where I was having a bet and then 10 minutes later we're having another bet and then 10 minutes after that I'm having another bet. Because I think that's where you run into trouble, because you're not giving yourself time to think, basically. I never got into that situation. I never had to worry about running out of cash, basically.
Okay, no, it's not strictly speaking true, because we last saw you as a sit-down interview like this in 2017, but I've been here and we made a little film together watching the horses going down, and you were explaining what you're looking for the horses going to the start, and you kept up with me with a few of those, didn't you, afterwards, how they went on. With the plethora of racing there is these days on the telly, quite often they pass the post and they're off to France or they're off to Clonmel or somewhere.
Yeah,
Is that become a bigger edge now? If you actually go and racing, the people that go racing have got that edge that they don't see. Even
I
the
think so.
replays you won't see, will you?
Yeah, I mean, you do need, obviously you need to practice this business of watching horses go post. You can't suddenly turn up on the racecourse and be able to do it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you've seen me do it. Other people have seen
The
me do it.
videos are still up, by the way, if anybody wants to watch them. Is there?
Other people have seen me do it. I mean, I came here with a friend who lives over in Suffolk and his wife for one of the evening meetings in September. And, I mean, I wasn't planning to have a bet. I was just here for the social evening with my friend. But each race, we stood up on the bank just up there, watched the horses go down to the start. And when they went down there was a 7 furlong nursery. They went down to the start, and my friend, he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, I think that the Hannon horse was utterly different class to all the others. You can have a bet." I said, "Well, I might. Yeah, okay, I am. Fair enough. I've seen it go to post, and I know it looks way the best in the race of those that we watched going to post. I don't know. I didn't even know what the horse's form was. I went round to the rails and I had 100 at 7-1, I think, something like that. 7.5, maybe 15-2. And this thing set off in front and made all the running, you know. And we come back and he said, "I still don't know how you do that." And I'd done it once before. We'd been at Newmarket at the July meeting. The meeting at the end of June, sort of the same day as the Northumberland Plate. And he was there with me with his brother. And I backed 3 horses, all of which were backed purely on the basis of watching the horses go to the start. And one of them was there was a 4-runner listed race, 1.5 miles. And one of the runners was a Godolphin horse that had never run on turf. 4 years old, had never run on turf. Good form on the all-weather and out in Dubai. And I watched them go to post, and I said to the other 2, that horse is no trouble with turf at all. And it was the 4-1 outsider of the 4. So I trot down the steps from where we were sitting on the stands, walk along the rails, looking along and trying to get the 4-1, and it's disappearing as I'm walking along. So I take 7-2, and I go back. This is hopefully a funny story to end with. I go back up into the stands, and my 2 friends are laughing, and they said, "What's funny?" They said, "See the bloke down there in the straw hat, yeah, and the bloke next to him in the white shirt." Yeah, he said, "They eyeballed you as you were walking down the steps." He said, "When you went towards the Wales bookmakers, they followed you, and they followed you all the way down the line. And when you moved it to have a bet, they ran forward to find out what you were backing, and they had a bet of their own." So this horse won by about 4 or 5 lengths, and he's gone on to win Rebels Romance. He's gone on to win Group 1 races all over the world, and I'm backing him in a listed race at 7-2. Great. So these guys were still down at on the lawn in front of us. So I wandered down and I said, "Shall we all go and collect together?" You know. And the guy with the straw hat says, "You don't remember me, do you, Alan?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm sorry. I do meet an awful lot of people on the racecourse over the years." He said, "I was an owner at the same time as you with David Ellsworth 40 years ago." And I'm thinking, and they're still following me around? I don't understand it.
Now, like you say, get funny stories coming to an end. We've got a few minutes left here.
Oh, well, I've got a good one about Barry Dennis.
Well, tell us the Barry Dennis.
One of your questions was about characters, wasn't it?
Well, that was what I was going to say.
Well, I mean, obviously the big character in the ring was Barry, wasn't it? You know, in the 90s.
No women.
Exactly, yeah. I had a bet with him in the last race of a midweek Goodwood meeting in the autumn, and the horse won 11-2. And I've had to look all this up to remind me. But there was a steward's inquiry. The winner and the runner-up had a bumping match at the furlong pole. So the 2 guys I was with and myself, we thought, we'll go off and have a cup of tea. They backed it as well, but not with Barry. So eventually we get the bing bong and the steward, placings remain unaltered. So I wander out to Barry's pitch, and he stood there with his 2 staff, and they've dismantled everything. It's all in a pile ready to go out of the good. "What's been keeping you, Al?" I said, "Well, I was waiting for the steward's inquiry, Barry." "I don't know," he says, "Punters, you can't do anything with them. Can't you fucking read?" And he points at the board, and there's a sign on the board that says, "We pay double result first past the post." Oh God, I am sorry, Barry. I apologise to his two staff for keeping him. There's something, there's something inimically comical about someone who's grovelling whilst being paid out £3,000. But to be fair to Barry, I mean, he's perfectly entitled to be annoyed about the thing. You know, me delaying them getting away. It was a fair old trek from Goodwood back to where he was based in Essex. But he'd stayed. He had stayed there. He'd waited, and he paid me out. And there was never any comeback from that afterwards. It was just a one-off where we had a bit of a laugh. You know, I liked the man. I always liked the man. I didn't always bet with him, you know, because he was more to sort of London and East, and I was more West. You know, I mean, the guys I knew in the ring mostly were Adrian Pariser, who was on the Sam Harris pitch. Often had a chat with him before racing about the cards. Tony Williams, of course. Now it's his son Andy. Peter Sutton, now it's his son Peter Jr. And I'm sure a man you'll remember with favour, Mel Jones.
Yeah, Mel Jones.
I mean, I got on famously with Mel.
From Newport. He's from Newport, Mel Jones.
Yeah, we'd stop him, you know, especially the jumping. He loved his jumping, didn't he? And you could always stop and have a chat with him about the horses. You know, to him, I think the sport was more than the betting side of things, really. And of course, they're on the rails. When I had the Hills account, John Best and Ray Emery. You know, I only found out years and years later that they were going off and backing the horses I'd backed on their own account.
They
basically
did like to follow in a Shrewdy.
Well, yeah.
That pair. Just finally then, Alan, if there were no restrictions, no affordability checks, and it was like the sort of betting utopia that you sort of described in the 90s, but now, would it be easier or harder to bet for a living than when you first started?
Probably still a fraction harder because of the free availability of information that I've already mentioned. I think there are more people doing it now, Simon. Yeah. So if you were, I mean, I was mostly obviously on the exchange. You know, sort of an American expression. Something I think one of the American writers used the expression that, you know, when he was betting on the American tote in the 70s and 80s, you know, he was the shark and there were lots of goldfish. But by the time he was betting on the tote in the 90s, the goldfish had all gone off to the fruit machines, and it was a shark versus shark. And I think that's what Betfair became, wasn't it? It becoming more and more shark versus shark. So it can't be easier. It must be harder if that's the case. You know, if the percentage of money that's from informed people is greater than it used to be, inevitably it's harder to win. Yeah.
Now you've dug your heels in, you know, with the bookmakers, even though they've got to do it. You've dug heels in with the affordability and stuff like that. Would there ever be a point where you would, if it was, tell them everything about Alan Potts' financial situation, or give up betting altogether if it was on course and everywhere? Which would you have to swallow? Would you have to bite the bullet, or would you just turn it in?
At my age, I'd just give up. Yeah. I mean, I can afford to give up, but I'm old enough to give up. And let's get one thing absolutely clear. How long have we got?
You've got a couple of minutes.
I've had a tremendous life, Simon. I'm one of the luckiest people you're ever going to know. Everything in my life fell into place. You know, the opportunity to go and work abroad that cut me off from being a mug punter and gave me the opportunity and provided me with the capital to become an owner for the first time. The fact that I was made redundant with a massive payoff from a job that, you know, I'd worked hard at, but it was still a lucrative departure, basically. And that gave me the capital to fully set up. And then at a point where I was just beginning to think, you know, after 15 months, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was, I get this 39 grand win on a tote jackpot, you know, for an 80 quid stake. From that day onwards, I never had any doubts after that, you know. But these things are luck, aren't they? I mean, a jackpot win is inevitably a fortunate thing. Picking 6 winners out of 6 races isn't easy. It never can be, you know. And I just think a lot of that. And I mean, there never would have been any books if I hadn't stood up there when it was still a terrace with a corrugated roof over it and fallen into conversation with Ian Carnaby. It was him who put me in touch with a publisher. I never would have made that effort on my own at all, you know. So without the books, none of the other stuff would have ever happened, you know. TV, tipping, writing, you know, who knows? Odds On magazine, all that sort of stuff. None of it would have happened without the first book, and the first book only happened because I bumped into Ian Carnaby. Yeah.
So thanks, Ian Carnaby.
Well, yeah. I mean, he has a lot. He has a lot to answer to. I'm just amazed. I've had a great life. I am amazed. Never cease to be amazed that people still reference these books. 30 years later, and still sort of know me as a name, which I'm not. I never went and sought all this stuff. It just happened. And I suppose the thing was, I was the sort of bloke who'd never say no. If someone invited me to do something like you've done, yeah. If someone invited me to do something, I'd say, yeah, I'll have a go. I'll try that. It'll be an interesting experience, if nothing else.
Well, we're very appreciative that you've done it, Alan, several times for me now. So thank you very much, and Alan Potts. Thank you very much.
Cheers.